This week, the notorious former Congressman Tom DeLay will finally face a jury of his peers in Texas. He may be far enough removed from Washington not to do much harm, but one of DeLay's closest cronies, a man virtually unknown to the public, is one of the main reasons this election is awash in secret money. He may also be the reason why Tom Donahue, head of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, isn't behind bars. Here is part 2 of Harry Hanbury's investigative series for GRITTV's new GRITtv Digs, The Loaded Chamber.
In its bid to buy American elections, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce has gotten help from all 3 branches of government. From a Supreme Court that allowed corporations to back and attack candidates like never before. From Senate Republicans who twice killed a bill to rip the veil off shadowy funders. And from an obscure but powerful executive branch agency, the Federal Election Commission.
The FEC is an incredibly dysfunctional agency. One of the main problems is it's evenly split between Republicans and Democratic commissioners 3-3. And any decision to take action against somebody requires a 4-person vote.
In September of 2004, Melanie Sloan's organization Crew filed a complaint with the FEC, alleging that the U.S. Chamber and its president, Tom Donahue, had made $3 million in illegal corporate contributions intended to tip the presidential election in favor of George W. Bush. The FEC's own general counsel found that the Chamber and Donahue had violated the very law that created the FEC. A violation so egregious, it's punishable by up to 5 years in jail.
But because the FEC was split 3-3, the matter died. It didn't go any further than that. Crew then asked for the Department of Justice to step in since criminal violations were involved, but the Department of Justice declined to do so, saying that it was really a matter for the FEC.
Attorney General Michael Mukasey and now, remarkably, even Eric Holder have refused to prosecute the Chamber for what the FEC's 3 Democratic commissioners view as serious violations of the law.
Which is ridiculous. The Department of Justice has its own jurisdiction over federal law, and criminal violations of campaign finance law are exclusively in their purview. And so saying that because the FEC, which everybody knows is dysfunctional and doesn't want to enforce the law, saying that because the FEC is not enforcing something, the Department of Justice won't, that's just a ridiculous view to take.
Meanwhile, the FEC's Republican commissioners have grown ever more extreme.
The commission has been hijacked by one lawyer in particular, Don McGahn, who used to be Tom DeLay's personal lawyer. Mr. McGahn has never met a campaign finance regulation that he approves of, and he's really there to stop any regulation of elections or campaign finance.
Don McGahn has been able to deadlock the commission on all major issues, including disclosure, and is essentially gutting our campaign finance law.
When the McCain-Feingold campaign finance law passed in 2002, it contained a simple yet strong rule on disclosure, requiring any independent group that pays for campaign ads to disclose the names of any donors who give $1,000 or more. But in 2007, the FEC quietly neutered this part of the law.
The FEC has determined that a group only has to reveal donors if the donor specifically earmarks their contribution for a specific ad. No one does that. I mean, people just, give $100,000 to a political party or a political group without saying, I want that $100,000 spent on such and such an ad to air on Tuesday in Ohio. No one's that specific. No one does that kind of earmarking.
So the FEC is basically sitting out the election as more and more money is coming in, and there needs to be more and more regulation. The FEC is actually taking a more and more hands-off view.
As a result, the Chamber of Commerce is now getting away with not disclosing anything at all.
And as the biggest and oldest player in this game, the Chamber has led the way for a new generation of right-wing groups, like Karl Rove's American Crossroads and former Senator Norm Coleman's American Action Network. A recent public citizen study reveals the consequences. In 2004 and 2006, nearly 100% of electioneering groups revealed who funded their ads. But only about half did in 2008, and less than a third did through the end of the 2010 primaries.
So what we're looking at here is a Federal Election Commission webpage, and you can see the almost total lack of disclosure All these groups, the Chamber of Commerce, have to report how much they spent on electioneering communications, but as you can see on the screen, they report zero donations, zero income, spending millions of dollars on campaign ads and not telling us who the donors are, where they're getting their money from.
Let's pause here to consider two big ironies. Big irony number one, that when Justice Kennedy wrote the majority opinion in Citizens United, he assumed that strong disclosure regulations were still in place.
He looked at the McCain-Feingold law and said, well, there's an excellent disclosure law on the books. So as long as it's all open and disclosed to the public, then, you know, very little harm will be done by letting corporations spend in elections. Justice Kennedy didn't realize the FEC just gutted the disclosure law. So his whole rationalization for allowing all this new money no longer is valid.
Big irony number two,
and they won't tell you where the money for their ads come from.
That for all his concern about anonymous corporate and foreign money, President Obama could do something about it.
Mr. Obama talks about the need for campaign finance regulation. The one area where he actually could take a role and could take a stronger stance against the FEC, he's failed to do it.
There are 3 commissioners whose terms have expired, and it's up to the president to replace them, and he hasn't done so. And one of those commissioners, by the way, is Don McGahn, who, you know, we really have to get off the Federal Election Commission. And, you know, we need to replace those 3 commissioners with individuals who are actually sincere about supporting and implementing the campaign finance law.
To reshape the FEC, the president would have to win Senate approval of his nominees over a likely filibuster led by Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
The same man who led the filibuster against the Disclose Act and has been one of the most vigorous defenders of the Supreme Court's ruling in Citizens United. Until one leg of this stool gives, the U.S. Chamber's power over American elections seems bound to grow. Coming up, what the media missed about the Chamber's foreign money scandal.
They asked the Chamber for an interview, and they repeated the Chamber lie.
And what Tom Donahue thinks about shipping jobs overseas.
There are legitimate values in outsourcing, not only jobs, but work.
That's in part 3 of The Loaded Chamber.